Good evening. I'd like to call to order tonight's Zoning Board of Appeals, Wednesday, September 6, 2023, in Independence Township. If you'd like to join me at the beginning of the meeting by standing the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Brian, if we could have a roll call, please.
Mr. Auger.
Present.
Mr. Epping.
Present.
Mr. Galley.
Here.
Mr. Sharl.
Here.
And Mr. Zurek.
Here.
Great. Gentlemen, welcome tonight. We have an agenda that's been published online and available here at the Township Hall. Get a review of the agenda and any additions, changes, or a motion to accept.
Move to accept. Second.
Motion to accept the agenda as written. We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we've got an agenda for this evening. Before we jump into our agenda, the first thing we do in our meeting is invite open public comment. So if anybody in the audience, doesn't look like we have anybody online, if anybody in the audience tonight would like to come up to the lectern and talk about anything that is not on the agenda. So we've got 4 items on the agenda. If you'd like to address the board and therefore the community on anything not on the agenda, now would be the time. Seeing none, I will close the public comment. We have no unfinished business tonight, so we'll go right into new business. As I said, we have 4 items on the agenda. What I'll do is one at a time, I'll read the items into the record. We'll give the address, the applicant's name, and the request for variances or whatever the applicant might be seeking. We'll then ask the applicant to come up to the microphone, introduce yourself, give us your name and address, so we've got that on the record. And then just walk us through what your application is about. Explain to us what your hardship is, what the situation is, what status your project is at, and so forth. We'll ask a number of questions, really just trying to engage in a conversation back and forth so we fully understand what's being sought. At that point, we'll open it up to the public, both online and in the audience. Anybody wants to speak on that application, also likewise come on up and give us your name and address. Anybody speaking tonight, I heard Alan mention it too, there's a sign-up sheet. We like to get your name and spelling and address so we get it right for the minutes. And then ideally what we'll do is we'll ultimately bring it back to the board. We'll deliberate a little bit and ideally make a recommendation one way or the other on that application. So with that, I will call the first case number 23-011. Christopher Freeman, petitioner, requesting a variance from section 5.06A4 in order to construct an accessory structure in front of the principal parcel, the principal structure on that parcel, which is at 7685 Bitterbush, also in the R1R Rural Residential section of the township. Good evening.
Good evening, how are you?
Good, how are you today?
Good. So, yeah, I'm Chris Freeman,
Perfect.
7685 Bitterbush. Here to clarify any or answer any questions on this petition or application for variance. I have a 10.5 acre property on Bitterbush Road, and I'm looking to add another garage for additional space. I've drawn on the drawing there, a rough drawing shows the angle of the home and excuse me, the angle of the home is the way I look at those intersection crosses on the far right side. If I do a straight line against the road, that's roughly parallel to the road. So the house is at an angle. Technically, you could view it as the structure will be in front of the house, but if you look at the drawing and look at the amount of property I have, it is a corner lot as well. I'm just looking to get a 28 by 36 foot structure built, additional garage site. You can see on would be the north side of that home there's a severe drop off. I'd have to deal with the environment there and bring in a lot more dirt, change the contour of the land right there. I can't put it behind the home. I've got a septic system at the end of the driveway, and on the west side of the home, far west side, you can see that's where my well's at, and there's no driveway or anything over there. So I'm looking to put the structure just off the driveway and 28 by 36 structure, and that's what I'm looking to do.
Okay, great, I appreciate that. So, because it's a large lot, so every lot in the township has setbacks, front, side, and rear. Oftentimes, on smaller lots, we're looking at setback or dimensional variances from the setback. In this case, you're within those boundaries of the setbacks, but the ordinance states that any accessory structure shall not be in front of the home. Your home is deeper into your lot, and you're asking for that, for the structure to be essentially in front of the home. Still quite a distance from the street.
Correct.
But in front of the home nonetheless. And so, we don't have real formal drawings, as you pointed out, but you're proposing to do a 28 by 26 foot standalone.
36 foot, yeah.
I'm sorry?
A 28 by 36 foot structure.
28 by 36 inch structure, and if I read some of these notes correctly, it's essentially about I'll call it the back or the north side of the proposed garage is going to be about 18 foot. Am I saying that right? In front
Correct.
of the front of your house?
Correct. And, you know, I'd like to say, if you look at that drawing that's up right now, I mean, technically, is the structure in front of the house or not? If you look at the corner of the house as it's on the north, on the
Southwest corner?
West corner, where that corner's at, and the angle of the house. I'm putting the structure at the same angle, but if you look at, if you do a parallel line off the road as I've shown there, technically it's really not in front of the house. There also are other homes in the area, and specifically one other home almost directly opposite in Bitterbush, where there's a structure, a large structure, in front of the house. They've got different variances because the house is all the way in the back, but, so this isn't an uncommon site in my neighborhood in the farm.
What can you tell us about the architecture and the construction of the building?
This will be just, it's gonna match the home, I don't know if you call it a stick build, but a regular
Yeah,
2x6 external structure.
concrete slab and,
Concrete slab, because what we're doing in the age of the concrete that's there off the northeast corner, part of the house, that's the apron for the garage, that'll be repaired or replaced as well. So everything's gonna match to meet the architectural designs of the current house and meet our requirements inside the subdivision.
The petitioner brought up an interesting point. He would need this variance even if he pushed it back behind the septic, correct? Because it's technically in front of the structure, because he has a double frontage.
Yeah, he'd have to actually curve it back around the building.
The
Yeah,
only
you're
place you
right.
could really
Basically
put
where
it is
the-
in the very back bottom corner where all the natural vegetation is, and then it's actually more obtrusive to the neighbor to the west,
Right.
correct? That's
Correct.
west.
so you're saying even though he's hundreds of feet from Reese Road,
He's still in
that
front.
would be the front yard too?
Yeah, it's technically in front of the house in both corners.
Mhm.
Is what?
It's technically in front of the house on both sides. Technically.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Reese
yeah.
Road as well as from Bitterwood?
Reese Road and Bitterwood.
Oh, yeah, good point, yeah.
Why couldn't it go back directly opposite the garage?
That's where there's a drop off, you know.
I mean, your thing doesn't show it that way. It says the hill is, farther to the northeast.
Let me, if I can step over there. I mean, again, this is me, I'm a sales guy, not an architect. That's what I was trying to depict here. This area here is all,
Low.
yeah, there's a severe drop off.
Well, there's a large spruce tree right opposite your garage.
Large fruit tree. No, that's
Spruce.
Spruce. Spruce. Oh, yeah, there's a lot of trees along the driveway there. Yeah.
So is the reason why this is in front of us is because of the Reese Road frontage?
It's both.
Well, when you look at that sketch that he had and the angle, you consider the front of the house all the way across and anything in front of it?
Yeah, we interpret it as the front plane of the home. So whatever angle it's at, that's.
That's the front.
Mhm.
Alan, any questions, thoughts?
No, I think Jim brought up most of the interesting points. I think probably the interpretation going with the plane of the house might be a little bit of a stretch in my mind, but that's what township interprets it. Because if he wanted to set it further off to the right, kept it on that same plane, even if we gave him off of Reese Road a variance, it'd be back in his rear yard setback because of the way the house is turned. I don't like seeing these kind of cases come before us without a survey and a site plan showing exact locations. I mean, hypothetically, we're going along with what he's saying on a well and septic. I was out to the site. I couldn't see any clear sign of a septic or the location of the well. In the visual inspection, I did see the low spot. I think with a little bit of creativity, I go along with Jim. I think it could be set back in line with the garage. The trees are gonna have to go anyway. There's a small berm there, a little bit of raised elevation on the
I have
rear
no
fence.
intention of removing any trees.
From what I saw, I don't know how you could put that in there without.
Let's let Alan finish up.
Because I looked at it too, and the way
Did you
those
walk
trees are
there?
spaced there, yeah.
Yeah, so it'd just be,
Tucked
it's on
between
this
the
side
two.
of the,
Well, there's a tree right where you're pointing at.
yeah, well, listen, guys, I live there. Those trees aren't moving. I'm not taking them down. And I'd be on the east side of those trees. I'd be close, but, you know, I'm really trying to do very, very minimal with anything with the contours of the existing land there.
Is it safe to assume that this is gonna be, some large doors, and they're gonna be facing west or on the 28-foot side of your garage?
Yeah, no, so our regulations inside in Bitterbush homeowners, I'm part of the architectural committee, by the way, is that I can't have a garage door facing the road.
This road, right.
Yeah, so I will have a garage door off the driveway, and I'll have a taller door out the backside facing the east for future, if I wanted to take a tractor or something and store it in that garage.
Facing the Reese Road side.
Pardon me?
Facing the Reese Road side.
Yeah. Yeah, we can't, we don't, there's only, that wouldn't pass our ACC, so.
Brian, if you put this house, I mean, would you draw that line, the dash line, would you then move that back to the southeast corner of the house and then run it to the east? I mean, in order to make this thing legal without a variance,
I'd run
and he
it,
pushed it back that far.
yeah, I mean.
It wouldn't be the plane of the house, though, would it?
Yeah, I think he had, this drawing here kind of shows the front, how he's drawn an angled line. That is the front plane of the home.
Right, yeah, I see
So-
that.
But either way, even if he moves it back beyond that line, he still needs to come here.
You're
Well, yeah,
still violating
because of
Reese
Reese, but Reese is not the issue, but what I'm saying is if you looked at the southeast corner of that house and then drew a line directly east, would that not be construed as not in front of that house? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, historically, that's how we've interpreted the ordinance to read. So, this is a unique scenario with a house that's angled like this. But we would always run it straight parallel with the front of the home. So the way he's drawn that line is accurate. And I think what he's trying to show with the straight line across is that's the southwest corner.
Well,
of
yeah, I
it.
understand that, I
Yeah.
understand that, I don't know what you're saying, but we're dealing with something now that's now east of the house. So it has to be behind the extension of the house?
Yeah, it would have to. So theoretically, I think Mr. Galley pointed out that The only place to put this is in the northwest part
Corner.
of his drawing.
Yeah,
Correct.
basically what you're saying is that the only place to make it technically legal would be opposite the garage that's already there.
Yeah,
Behind the garage, without
Like-
exceeding the plane of that garage.
Yeah.
Right, so essentially in the backyard,
yeah, he'd be looking at it out of his
west
back.
of the septic as it's shown there.
How deep is your lot? Four, I don't see a marker anywhere on here.
Probably 1320 by
400?
330, I don't know.
Three something, 400?
I think it's about, I measured all the way back to the house, is about
He's
200
got the
foot
legal
from,
description on there.
yeah, it's about 400
Meets
foot
and
wide.
bounds.
So you're more than 200 feet off the road.
Yeah.
I think I have just two more questions. One is the roofing would be matching the roofing of the house or as close as possible?
Pitch or
1142
material?
Both.
by 1142
Material,
by 400.
absolutely. Pitch, will, we're going, I want it as close as
396.
possible to pitch it.
Yeah.
And there's so many pitches on the end, on that
On your
front
house?
garage.
Yep,
You know, the gate, and
yep,
so it's, let's pick a pitch or something, that's
Okay.
what we're kinda into, but yeah.
okay. And then my second question, or my last question will be, has anybody come forward to concern, or I'd like to hear any customer, any neighbors or any complaints?
Any
No, we've
communication?
not received anything.
Why don't we do that now? Is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak on this application? Seeing no one in the audience, no one else online, and no correspondence. Gentlemen, any additional questions, thoughts, comments, motions?
I just want to make one more comment to Alan. Obvious, I've got to go now to get, depending on how this goes, we've got to go to permit. And I was just trying, I didn't want to pay, I wasn't sure what was going to happen here, so I didn't want to pay for a survey, all that. That stuff will be, I think it has to be part of the permit anyways, but plan to get it surveyed and everything laid out, staked properly.
One-
It's when our applicants say where the well and septic is
Yeah.
without any formal survey or anything, definitely outlining it.
Yeah,
We're taking your word for it,
yeah,
and we've had people stretch things before.
yeah, I hear you.
I mean, I'm not saying you know what I'm saying.
Well,
They-
other than trees
accidents
and
happen.
grade, I don't see how the septic affects this anyway. Septic's behind the driveway,
Yeah, if I were.
green
to-
area.
Yeah, it's the greenest patch of grass. I can pretty much
The
guarantee you that's
septic
where it is.
becomes.
Put a garage here, this is where the septic.
No,
field is.
I'm not talking about putting it there, I'm talking about putting it,
Way over here.
no.
Oh.
Right directly opposite the entrance to your existing garage,
Okay.
right where that,
Where those trees
where
are.
those trees are.
Yeah,
Yeah, and that doesn't affect,
and that's where that swale,
that
What's
could
the
be
total elevation drop from the flat
Yeah.
field down to the driveway, would you say?
I'm gonna have, even where I'm showing you, I had, one of the guys come out with this little stick, and there's still a 3-foot drop, 2.5 to 3-foot drop where I'm at on the corner, so that I'll have to bring in some dirt. But if I were over on that far side, he just for grins went over there, and it was almost 9-foot drop.
So it's a 9-foot gradient difference
Yeah,
from your driveway pad to the top of that hill,
yeah.
plus minus.
You mean to the deepest part of the swale, because it goes downhill.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, but you can see the deep part, that's that dark green in the picture. That's how far it is away, it's way, way far away.
yeah, that dark green is a back, is lawn and part, that's where I'm told I bought this a year or two ago, and that's the next thing I do is call the septic guy to come out and mark that, so that I make sure I'm not, I won't have issues in the future, but, I think what you were talking about, Alan, is this is where that swale is right in here.
Well, that's where it falls off.
Yeah,
But the deepest part is still out there another 20, 30 feet. I was out there today.
yeah, oh yeah, up by that goofy looking tree.
Right.
It's real deep. Should have stopped in.
Not allowed to.
We don't do that.
That's why the dogs are barking.
Well, we've got a situation where we have a large piece of property where, at least thinking about how I've addressed some of these properties in the past, is the home, had the home been built up to the front setback line, at least as it relates to Bitterbush, or to Reese, if it would have been moved. But because of the location of the house on a large piece of property like this, it makes it more difficult, or at least, provides opportunity to build an accessory structure in the front yard. In this case, it's a little unique in the sense that the properties, or the building's on an angle, and we've got two fronts, even though we're quite a distance from Race.
I have a question for Brian. Brian, if this gets approved because of Reese Road, it's in the front yard, is that strictly only for this structure? Or could another structure, because he's got a large parcel and he's sure not exceeding what he can build out there according to township regulations, does that mean he could go and put another one out there?
I would recommend that if you're gonna make a motion for approval, it's on this application for this structure only, because you're right, he could. He'd have the ability to do it. Now, he would come in again for permit, and we'd deny him from zoning compliance, because if he puts it anywhere out in the field, part of the site, so he'd have to put it in that back corner if he could meet setbacks, if you wanted to do a second structure down the road. So I would only make it contingent on this application for that size structure.
Could always come back to the ZBA in the future again if you wanted to.
Yeah.
I just did a quick overhead scan of the neighborhood. I mean, there's some tennis courts in some front yards, there's some accessory structures
There
in some
is.
front yards. I mean, I assume there's been
Yeah,
a few variance cases or some stuff that was built.
yeah, we have multiple
Grandfathered in.
variances on Bitterbush.
Yeah.
So even if I wanted to put a barn out in that field, I'd need to, it would be in front,
Yeah,
Yeah.
the same
in the middle of that
situation.
field,
Yeah.
so, kind of a bummer.
I guess I'd like to try and make a motion, but before I do that, I'd like to try and use some numbers and get some feedback. His sketch here shows off the front plane of the house, he's thinking about putting the side of the garage 18 feet forward off the plane. And he's talking about building a 28-foot structure, so that adds up to, he cannot go beyond 46 feet from the front plane of the house. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And then the other thing we brought up is that this applies to only this one structure. Those are the, I guess, two big key,
The architecture?
would we, and, okay, good point.
Yeah,
The architecture comes close to matching the house, would that,
and then footing survey and placement survey to the township.
final survey? Does that sound,
Or do you do it
Location
on
of footings.
footings, placement survey? Yeah,
Placement verification.
placement verification. So when you put your footings in, you won't want the surveyor to verify the placement. You don't wanna build the whole thing and be 2 feet off.
Yeah,
If we're limited to 46 foot.
okay, so I would like to propose in case 23-01 for Mr. Freeman's request for an exception to the accessory structure in front of the principal structure at 7685 Bitterbush, that we accept his request upon the following requirements. The structure is approximately 18 foot off the plane face of the house. The final build cannot be more than 46 feet perpendicular to that same plane of the house. That this only applies to the one structure that is 28 foot by 36 foot. That the final placement of the footings be confirmed. And I think that was it.
Architecture.
Architectural.
And thank you, the architectural structure of the garage will come close to matching the house.
Yeah.
We have a motion?
I'll support the motion.
A motion to approve with the requirements as outlined and support. Brian, if we could have a roll call, please?
Mr. Auger?
I'm gonna say yes, but I don't like it.
Mr. Epping?
Yes.
Mr. Galley?
Yes.
Mr. Charles?
No.
Mr. Zurich?
Yes.
Your motion passed. You'll have to work with the building department to get those surveys, validate once it is, when those footings are poured, that those meet these requirements. And all the other, the building department will be aware of the architectural standards set forth here, and you'll have to follow those.
Perfect.
Good
Yeah,
luck.
I appreciate the consideration.
Thank you. Good
Thanks
luck.
for your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Very good. Moving on to the second case of the night, case number 23-012, Mike Powers petitioner requesting 59.75 square foot variance from section 12.05, table 12.05B1, in order to construct a new wall sign at the Mount Zion facility at 4900 Maybe Road, which is in the R1A single-family residential zoning of our township. Mr. Powers, are you in the audience?
My name's Garrett with Signarama Flint. I'm representing Mike Powers from Signarama.
Thank you. Garrett, could we have your last name, please?
Poulin,
Poulin.
P-O-U-L-I-N.
Thank you.
I'm Rich Noack. I'm Associate Pastor at Mount Zion, coming to speak on behalf of the church today.
Great, thank
I
you
live
for
at
joining us.
5592 Adderstone here in Clifton.
Perfect, thank you. And tell me your last name again, I'm sorry?
Noack, N-O-W-I-K.
Thank you. Mr. Noack, are you going to begin and give us an overview?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sure you're familiar with Mount Zion. We've been in the community for, well, actually in 2 weeks we'll be celebrating 45 years.
Wow.
We started at Mann and Clintonville Road, and in the early 90s we moved to our current location at 4900 Maybe. We added on about 13 years ago the new auditorium, and we put a monument sign in at that time. I'm sure you're aware of that. And so that sign is mostly visible from I-75 when the foliage is down. And so we came in today hoping to get a variance to increase the size of the wall sign. The building is set back from the road, from I-75, and so we're asking for that variance for increased visibility from I-75. We recently had someone post on Facebook that they were really impacted by one of our classes, and they wanted everyone to know about it. And I'm all for social media and promotions and advertising through social media, but I think traditional advertising and signs still have a great place in our community. As you drive up and down Sashba on the main corridors in our community, signs are prominent everywhere. And so we're asking for a variance to increase our visibility from I-75.
And can you tell me, so the zoning ordinance in Independence Township has spent a lot of time on our zoning ordinance. The zoning ordinance allows a 100 square foot wall sign.
Correct.
And it's defined by the area of the sign, and you've got an emblem and the name of the church, and it's within that rectangle. Typically it'd be 100 square foot. What size compared to that 100 square foot? What's the I guess the ordinance tells it it's about a 60 foot, a 59.75. So it's about 50% larger than the ordinance would anticipate.
Correct.
And I think in your application, you give those dimensions in inches, basically 162 inches tall by about 142 inches long.
Correct.
Okay, and that's gonna go as you see there. And you think that's more or less to scale how big it's gonna be on the building?
Correct.
Okay. Any, from a sign point of view, is this gonna be illuminated? Is this gonna be backlit? What's the material gonna be?
Yeah, this is going to be an illuminated sign, day-night vinyl, so it's going to appear, dark during the day, and then at night it'll illuminate white.
Internally or projected on it?
Projected out. It's a front lit
That looks bigger than
signage.
Front light, so it's,
Yeah.
the light is going back towards the sign, towards the building.
No, towards
It's
I-
Out-
an,
out-
it's an
out, yeah.
internally lit sign.
Internally lit, yes.
Got it, okay,
Yeah.
That whole drawing is bigger than this one.
okay. And currently, there's a lot of Bradford pears in front of it. Are those trees coming down too, like the upper, or are those trees still gonna be there?
The trees have come down.
They've already come down,
Yeah.
okay. Okay. Ken, I'm gonna start with you tonight.
Sure. I guess, Pastor Noack, you already have two signs, correct?
Correct.
One right along I-75,
And then
and
the
you,
other
and you
maybe
did mention the growth, the bushes, and I don't think there was any trees, but the growth on probably the state property is excessively high right now.
It's excessively high in general, and I've reached out to the state, and the permit process to go through to actually do anything to take that down is pretty extensive. Because of the bat issues, they want to be saving any locations for bats, so they're not wanting us to take any of that down. I didn't get into the full process because of the approval process. It's pretty lengthy, and the fees are up front, not on the backside, so. So coming from, if you're on South I-75, you can't see the monument sign until you're almost past the building, you can make it out. From the, gosh, I'm drawing a blank on the bushes, the trees, the sumac
Right.
is tall enough that you can't see it. Coming north I-75, there's bushes and trees along that route, but you can see it a little bit sooner.
Similar angles, if you're going northbound on I-75, looking at your proposed sign would be a bit difficult, wouldn't it? I mean, you'd have to be a passenger in the,
If you're going north on I-75,
northbound.
the building is pretty square to I-75. I'm not, I don't have a
Yeah.
specific.
My gut
way
feeling
to
is it's
look
like
at
a
that.
30-degree angle.
Okay. Oh, there's a good picture there.
Yeah. 32 degrees, I think.
30.
If you're
So what
stuck in
so what
knob
we-
traffic, you could read it.
Yeah.
So what we do gain is from South I-75 traffic.
Okay.
The visibility goes up substantially.
Okay. I'm hesitating a little bit in, I don't know, how high are we allowed to go along I-75? The same rules apply for along I-75 as along Sashabaw? I mean,
Yeah, it's a different sign district, but it doesn't matter. It's still, the maximum is still the same on a wall sign. So it's a maximum of 100 square feet, and based on your per foot of frontage. So if the building was only 30 feet wide or long, he could have 30 square feet, and that's how the equation works. But he's well over 100 on that frontage, so he's maxed out at 100. He can't go any higher than 100 square feet. So that's what the variance is for, is the difference, the additional area that they're requesting.
I guess I'm just a little bit hesitant, and the only thing I want to say is, to me, you need to show more effort to clear out I-75 view so you can advertise off I-75 better with the existing sign. And I could imagine how hard it is to work with the state, but I do know there's some businesses farther south of you that have cleared out I-75, and I have no idea what they've gone through, but there's, I think it's Jabal Company that cleared it out, and somebody else near them. So I guess I would like to see more effort there first for me personally looking at increasing your allotment of the sign.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you, Ken. Brian?
Two questions. If this were in front of the planning commission today, how's the rest of their sign package? Is it in compliance? You probably didn't do the research on that, but just off the top of your head, knowing what you know.
Well, the two ground signs, obviously that was given a variance in the past. The additional ground sign on 75.
On the 75 side.
Yeah, I don't know what signage is on the auditorium. It's been a while since I've been over there. So I was there for the elections, but I don't recall. I'd have to drive around and, do some research on it to see.
I get the feeling that was within spec, the one that's off of Maybe Road.
The front,
pretty small.
well, the maybe road frontage one.
Yes.
You mean
And
the
there's
auditorium?
the second entrance, yeah, the auditorium entrance. There isn't one at the first entrance. But
Some of those would be considered directional signs, where it says entrance or.
Inside the property are directional signs,
Yeah.
but there's
Right.
no other signs on the building itself.
Right.
Right, yeah.
There's no other wall signs. We're not approving an
Correct.
additional wall sign.
Correct.
And I guess my other question is for you guys, so 13 by 12 works, but 10 by 10 doesn't. Why would that be? Because 10 by 10 would give us what's allowed, correct?
Mhm.
What's the other?
So what it does gain us is that our name and the icon, the logo go on the building versus just the icon itself. So that's what we gain, is the ability to actually have our icon and the name represented on the building.
So if you shrink the whole thing down, you think it gets too small to have the Mount Zion in there and have that noticeable?
I had like a kind of a perspective.
You would just have the
view.
circle as 10 by 10 is what you're saying. You'd lose Mount Zion.
Because as it gets to the size, keeping Mount Zion, it gets very difficult to read.
And that's using the same process we usually do to scale the sign.
And that's something that so if I can jump in kind of on your thought process, I've gone through visually the township, Independence Township, and I can't think of a lot of other buildings that have the highway visibility that you have. Most of Independence Township is kind of,
Inside-
internalized to the
inside the
highway.
township.
This is one of the few buildings that really has visibility, frontage. And so then I started going to other large buildings, question of scale. Your building's larger than most in the township, and I can think of like the McLaren Hospital, which has a sign, and I think that was ultimately given, predates our current sign ordinance, which has tightened the rules, and it's been an important component of the township. And that had a variance of some sort, or maybe it was part of the PUD
Yeah.
when it was originally designed. In my mind, I can't think of another large-scale building in Independence Township, almost period. We don't have that many taller buildings like that. And then I started going through some of the different churches and religious facilities, and I don't see a lot of those. Of course, most of them are on more residential streets, but I can't visualize any that have exceeded it, but they don't necessarily have that 80-mile-an-hour traffic issue either.
And 650 feet of frontage on I-75 was the other part. I know that exceeds, I know the township limits that, doesn't look at the full scale of that. But we have 650 feet of frontage, which was one of the other thoughts that we had, is, to capture
Proportionally.
people in their traffic,
Yeah.
while they're driving.
Proportionally, right. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's fine. Those were my two questions.
Jim?
This configuration of a sign is different than that.
Yeah, that was in the design process when we were trying to decide what.
So which one that's the one you're proposing?
Yeah, that's what we were proposing.
Okay.
Just got different.
Given the size of that building and the amount of roof area that you're at, or I don't know what you call that, roof, but the end of it, the gable end, I think it fits within the scale, and I have no issues with the request.
Thank you, Jim. Alan?
I was on the board when they came before us for the I-75 sign, and going over the minutes, Brian pulled them for me. There was no discussion on the wall sign that got in the minutes. And I know our minutes weren't as accurate as they are today. A lot of things were left off. There was a lot of discussion on that I-75 sign. Just a question for you guys, how many, your congregation is getting smaller,
It's staying about the same.
and your auditorium, you're not getting the people in for it?
For concerts and large events, but not for Services Health.
Because normally signage would attract people, and I don't see them losing any parishioners. I don't see, when I'm on Maybe Road going to Orion, I don't see a lack of, a lot of space in the auditorium parking lot. Were the trees that they're talking about taken out in front of the building part of their site plan approval from the planning commission when they were first built?
Most likely, yes. It's part of the street, I am sure that they're part of the parking lot requirements.
So they'd have to be replaced someplace on the comparable sizes on the
Sure.
location. I think a 10 by 10 is more than adequate on that gable end, as high as it is. And northbound traffic's the only one that's gonna see it. And once they get past you, they're not coming back.
Southbound traffic.
I mean southbound. Northbound's not gonna see it unless they're stuck in Pine Knot traffic, and it's the winter time. I can't see, we got a lot of churches with a lot of bigger faces, or equal faces of this in the township. I think if they met our sign ordinance, I'd approve it, but I can't go the bigger size.
I appreciate it. My thought process, and then we'll open it up to the public for any comment, is I think it's essentially a design issue as opposed to a sign issue. I like the emblem, I like the logo, and I certainly appreciate scale and proportion. But at the end of the day, you know, there is the ability to just eliminate the emblem, and then, quite frankly, Mount Zion could be even bigger and more visible from the highway than it is now, or is proposed now. So if it's a question of marketing, if it's a question of awareness, I think that there are alternatives within the ordinance that could make either the emblem or the name larger, or, you know, maybe the name is larger and the emblem is smaller. I think there's design options out there that, in my mind, although I appreciate, I think it's really kind of nice looking, and I agree with Jim that from a scale point of view, I hate when I see little teeny signs on big buildings, but in this case, I think that because you're not a global brand that has a sign ordinance and says, boy, we must meet these standards, it's kind of a really great design that you guys have created, and I think that there's some probably creativity that could work within the sign ordinance that doesn't, start to exceed the sign ordinance that, frankly, this township's had a lot of discussion about, and our role as a ZBA is to, in my opinion, is first and foremost to understand and defend, for lack of a better term, the ordinance, and then look for those true hardships on pieces of property or buildings that really just, boy, there's just no way they can meet this ordinance. And I, the more I look at it, I think there are abilities to meet the ordinance. It may just be a different design.
Okay.
With that, if there's anybody in the audience that cares to talk on this application? Ma'am? If you don't mind coming up to the lectern, just so we're broadcasting on local TV, and that way everybody gets a chance to see you.
This is live.
I just wanted, sorry.
If you could give us your name and your address, please.
My name is Sandy Shanae, 4700 Golf Classic Drive West.
Thank you.
I'm just coming just to make sure that there isn't any added lighting or anything to the other side of the church. From the subdivision, I live in the subdivision.
Directly across, maybe?
Yes, and I have spoken with some, and they're concerned, and I got this notice where some did.
Yep.
There's concern that any excess lighting along that side would be a concern. But it's sounding like, from what I'm hearing, there won't be, so I'm just verifying that, so when I go back to our own board meeting, I can.
We'll ask Mr. Nowak to answer that, but the application is really just for this sign, and the
That's what-
sign
okay.
is proposed to be lit from the inside out, so it would kind of glow at night, but it would be facing 75.
That's what I'm
not-
verifying, that's
Right.
all.
We'll double
Yes.
check, but it doesn't sound like there's, at least in this application, there's any change to the lighting. They may be doing that otherwise, but we'll verify that.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate you coming tonight. Is there any other lighting changes on the property? Okay,
There'll be no other lighting changes.
Appreciate
Just for this particular sign.
thank you. So, is there any, before I bring it back to the board, any other thoughts that we should be considering, or?
Just maybe, I guess in the future, because a lot of different, I know everywhere's different. Just being on the expressway, a lot of businesses come in, they want large stuff. I know he's kind of restricted because he's in the residential area, and that kind of hurts him too, even though he is facing, he's zoned for the residential. He's not on like the Sashball Road and getting the large sign, but that was one of the reasons we thought maybe it would be possible, and we tried to put it in there so it was reasonable, because for the size of their building and the frontage, it's kind of just something we thought maybe was a possibility.
No, I appreciate that. The way I read the ordinance is that all the zones have that 100, or nearly all of them have that 100 square foot. There is a difference in letter height and things that, based on the zoning. We get an awful lot of discussion, both at this board and others, Planning Commission, where Mr. Galley serves, about signage, and I know it's kind of an ongoing discussion. And so I think things like that are valid, and I, again, from an architecture point of view, think about the scale of the building versus the sign. Sometimes they look silly, but in this case, I don't think the fact that unless I'm misinterpreting that, the fact that it's technically in the single-family residential doesn't relate to the square footage of the sign.
No,
Okay.
it's the same as commercial.
Perfect, thank you. Do you know if there's any other thoughts or questions or motion? I will go ahead and make a motion in the case of 23-012, Mount Zion Church at 4900 Maybe Road. I motion that we do not grant a variance of 59.75 square feet for the sign request, in the sense that, or for the reasons that it is a self-created hardship, and there's not a unique hardship to this property or structure.
Support.
We have a motion and support. If we could have roll call, please.
Mr. Epping?
Yes.
Mr. Galley?
Yes.
Mr. Charles?
No.
Mr. Zurich?
Yes.
Mr. Auger?
Yes, yes.
Yes to
It's
deny the
denied.
variance. So I appreciate you coming. I'm sorry, because we certainly support everything that you guys do in the community, both at that location and throughout the community. We're all about helping you advertise. I think the idea of working to maybe sneak over the fence at night, you're all about forgiveness, trim little bushes, who's the wiser? But
Is that in the minutes?
the fact that you're all about forgiveness.
We
Be
never
careful.
strike that.
Be careful.
Just
But,
making sure we're in the minutes on that one.
But again, I think that there are some opportunities. We're certainly not saying that the building shouldn't have a sign. We're asking you to take a close look at the ordinance.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
your time tonight, guys.
Appreciate you. Whatever. All right, with that, moving on to case number 3, case number 23-013, Dan Borso, petitioner, requesting a 7-foot variance from section 4.06D, table 4.06, in order to permit an addition which is already constructed at a home at 6651 Clintonville Road, which is in the R1A single-family residential portion. There you are.
I'm here.
How are you?
Good.
Did I pronounce your name correctly? Borso?
Borso. Yeah, perfect.
Appreciate it. So again, maybe just you can state just your name and your address, and then
Sure.
explain what's
Dean
going on.
Borso, 6651 Clintonville Road.
Great.
So, as you stated, we thought the first one was a little unique with an angle on the property. This one's even more unique for my folly of errors leading up to this meeting. So, about 2 years ago, I started the construction on a garage. We'll call it an extension because it is attached to the house. And having not actually lived anywhere where there's a subdivision growing up, I didn't even think about pulling permits. So the property was, or the building was, let's say 85% done when I believe some aerial photography was done, and the commission stopped by and said, you know, you gotta stop and pull permits for the project, which I then did. And then we found out that there was a setback violation. So, yeah. So the property markers are now on that violation, or on the setback showing that. So as you stated, it is a 7-foot variance setback. The property or the building is 100% complete. It does match, obviously, the architecture of the home and everything, and it's currently serving as my office, as my office was closed because of COVID, so there's nowhere to go anymore. So it kind of, that you'll see that window in the corner is where my office is, which is actually, completely in the setback. But I was actually expecting to have my neighbor here to speak on my behalf as well. So the neighbors to the north moved in partially the way through the construction and stopped by and talked to me about it because they had heard from the previous owner that I had started construction and it may be close to their property line. I think they were interested in putting up a fence for their dog, which is why those markers are there. I did a site plan on it and made sure everything was in line with what they needed to see what they had to go through for their fence. So again, in speaking with them, given the location of the extension being the northwest corner, it's as far away from their house as you can get on the property. And they're okay with the building being there. It's technically not on their property, but it is within the setback violation on their property, so it's getting close to there. But again, I had conversations with him, and we went so far as to see, could I purchase property from him to alleviate this? But in speaking to, I think, a gentleman on the board here, that actually wouldn't have fixed anything, because the property, I believe, both properties are in a grandfathered in for their ratio, for a length-width ratio. And if we had purchased property from him, he would have to get a variance as well for the length-width ratio, as would we, to move that. So unfortunately, that was not an option to rectify the situation. So here I am to see if pretty much I can get it approved. We talked about hardship off the offset. To be honest, there was no hardship to make me build this, other than I needed an office to get out of the house. So as I stated in the application, not being tongue-in-cheek at all, being very serious in the application, the hardship honestly would be to take it down at this point, because it is not a traditional outbuilding. It's not a stick building. It's not a prefabricated type of building. It is in complete architectural harmony with the rest of the building. All the siding is exactly the same. The roof is exactly the same. It even has kitty corner, windows as in the front of the building. So I put a lot of time and effort into it. The last 2 years of my life, as my children can attest to. I did all the construction myself as well. So had I had a contractor come, they probably would have mentioned it to me to say, how close are you to the setbacks, how close are you to the property lines. But I did choose to build the entire building myself. So that was obviously my error, to not be aware of the setback when I started the construction.
So I appreciate that. So to be clear, it's technically, because you've got that long skinny lot, even though it's at the back of your house, it's technically a side setback that we're in violation of.
Okay.
And I'm saying this really just for the record. In the R1A, our side setbacks are 10 foot and 10 foot, or a total of 20. And so that back corner, I'll call it, of your house should be 10 foot. You've got a 7.5 foot, so basically 7. So it's about just under
2 to 3 feet.
2 foot or so from
Correct.
the property line. So it's
That's
right up.
correct.
And then I guess maybe to add insult to injury, the sidewalk actually extends onto your neighbor's
Oh, the
property.
apron, correct.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's a situation where the home is 2 foot or less from the property line.
Correct.
And then the apron, which is a concrete sidewalk essentially, actually extends onto the
Correct.
neighbor's property.
That is correct, yes.
Did you use an architect?
I had an architect for preliminary drawings, just to get an idea of what I needed in terms of structural build. But the architect did not, I believe, he might have come on site one time, but he did not go into depth to pull any information about the property lot size. Because what I had contracted him to do was to say, from from a structural standpoint, you know, where do beams need to go, how thick do they need to be, what needs to be here to make the building meet everything else and then not fall down in essence.
Right. So it's interesting, and I'm just trying to walk through the logic here, because really the reason we have a very, very good building department in the township is not only to enforce the rules, but to enforce safety, but you know, they're kind of overlapped. So when you come in for a building permit, Brian and his team and our building team and Dave's in the back, really what we do is we look at, is it going to fall down? Is it designed well? Is it electrically safe? Is it the elevation safe? And by the way, we kind of cross-reference it against the zoning ordinance and say, well, wait a minute, you're in violation of this or this. Much like the first applicant wants to build a garage and came in and said, well, wait a minute, you're in front of your house. You know, there's mechanisms in place. It's a difficult situation, and when you've gone ahead and built a structure.
Right.
It just never occurred to you from electric, I mean, I watch TV shows and people talk about permits. You go to a party at your buddy's backyard and like, oh my gosh, you know, the inspector had to come and check my fence post. I mean, you know, kind of a building in America is all about permits and inspections, and it just kind of startles me that it seemed like, you know, a well-spoken guy, you never knew we needed permits.
To be honest with you, that really didn't cross my mind, and it really should have, obviously. But my focus was more on getting it built and the aesthetics and kind of having that extra space. So I wasn't really even thinking about it. And obviously, that would have alleviated the entire situation, right?
Yeah.
From the get-go. But once I was aware of that, obviously, I was in, you know, complete understanding of why that needed to be done, and subsequently did pull the permits and have got all the permits approved and finalized, save the building permit, obviously, because this outstanding issue. So,
Yeah.
but that's you raise a very valid point, I think.
You don't think some people who live back in the woods who have been before this board before kind of came with the assumption, oh, we didn't think you'd ever notice because you can't see my house from the woods or from the road, and
Well,
you know,
I-
I'm not suggesting you've done that, but perhaps
Yeah.
other people in the community might say they're never going to notice.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously I'd seen aerial photography of the house before, so I didn't think that I was really hidden from anything. And obviously the taxes on the property are going to change, and actually did change prior to the completion of the building. So, so I was aware that it was going to be noticed and looked at and considered. So I don't think I was trying to hide much anything.
Okay.
And given the size of the house and the size of the extension, it's tough to hide it. It's not a shed, so.
Right.
Yeah.
So you brought up the other part of our ordinance that has to do with a lot of lots that are long, skinny lots like yours and your neighbors and everything, and there is a width to a length to
Width ratio.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And a lot of the older homes, lots, you know, that have been platted throughout our community, were done so before the ordinance was in place, and probably yours and the neighbors and everybody, many lots are long and skinny.
Right.
And typically what happens is if they come back for, you know, again, drawing attention to the first example, if it came back and said, hey, I want to put a garage because my house is way in the back of my lot, I want to put a garage up in my front yard, one of the variances, almost a procedural thing, would be to consider that width to length ratio, just to kind of clean up the books as we go through each property. So,
Okay.
so it would be a variance, you're right about that. We had a situation, and I'm going to open it up to my colleagues here, but we had a situation, going through examples of how situations like this. We had a property a few years ago that wanted to do a parcel split. Little different situation. The building wasn't built yet, but they wanted to create a parcel, and the parcel wasn't quite wide enough. And that applicant ultimately went and bought X number of feet from their neighbor to make sure that their property was now wide enough and it didn't didn't harm his property. Both of those properties, as part of that process, including the neighbor, had to come in for a kind of a clarification and a variance on the ratio.
Yeah,
But-
that's exactly the scenario that I was laying
Yeah,
out when talking
so
to the
so
neighbor.
it's not it's not unheard of, that's been done. And it is a solution that, potentially could be considered to bring your, to build this, I'm trying to understand how, almost certainly the building department would have denied this as a permit, and so now you're asking us to figure out a way to just kind of look the other way, and at least in my mind, I'm going through what are some of the solutions that might be doing it. And although it would require some additional variances, there is an ability to buy some property from your neighbor and reestablish that setback.
So I guess on that topic, so I think there's two important pieces there. One, I don't think we can easily say there's an ability for me to buy property from my neighbor. Like, can I afford to buy property from my neighbor? Perhaps. Is he willing to sell the property? That's a whole nother question, right? So let's assume that was the case and he was willing to sell me 10 feet of land, which is all I would need, right? Does that mean that, well, you just stated that he needs to come before the board then and ask for a variance, or is it more of a procedural thing at that point because we know the situation? Because what I don't want to do is I don't want to cause
Yeah, and I guess
hardship to him to say, now you have to get a variance because I did something wrong, and I have to get a variance. So now you guys are doing two variances as opposed to a single variance here.
Yeah, you could just
Chunk it,
buy the whole
2
thing.
acres.
Right. Just
I,
straight back.
I would love to buy 2 acres from him.
Yeah.
He's not going to sell me 2 acres.
Well,
Well-
in the previous scenario that Mr. Epping was talking about, the person that was causing the issue to need the split or the boundary adjustment actually applied for,
On behalf
on
of,
behalf of the neighbor
Okay.
and, paid the fee.
So just the single party went through the whole process and kind of kept him
Yes.
on. Okay,
Right.
fair enough.
kind of
Yeah,
took it from.
okay.
And you're right, there's not a guarantee that, hey, if you do this, you'll get all these variances.
Sure.
They would still have to be considered and looked at and everything. But it's a solution. Another solution is take the building down, and then, so all of a sudden, it's like, boy, do I want to take the building down, or do I really want to work with my neighbor? And, you're asking for a variance, any way you cut it. It's a variance to essentially forgive me for what I've done, or it's a variance to, look at the ratio, and there's probably other variances that we could be talking about, but it's a solution or a possibility that at least comes to my mind as we're starting to think of this. But, Jim, we want to start down with you?
Yeah, I'm looking at a picture here that has some scaffolding and a couple of red doors. Are those actually on the north side of this building?
They are, yes.
Do you use those to get in and out vehicles?
Just 4-wheelers and lawn care equipment.
Are there any other accesses into this garage?
The front, normal access. There's 2 man doors on either side, one here and one on the east side as well. And then
Well,
if
on
you,
the south side, is there a garage door?
yes, there is.
There is?
Yeah, that's how cars would get in. So that area under the window there, that's 10 feet from the back of the building going south. That's a loft where my office is. So cars wouldn't come that far back.
Well, I know it's a hardship because that's where your office is, but every time you come out of that garage, you technically trespass.
Yes, technically.
You do.
Yes. Which is why I had the conversation with him, and he's in the process of drafting a legal document allowing me to trespass. in essence.
I have to look at this as if it were something that came to this board and you were asking for a variance before you started anything to build this. I couldn't agree with a variance at that point because there's no hardship involved in this.
Correct.
And I guess at this stage of the game, that doesn't change my opinion.
Fair enough.
So, I mean, I see no hardship. I see that someone violated township ordinances. And us caving in at this point to allow this is not in my way of thinking.
I think caving in is a little harsh. We must take into consideration a few things here. One, the complexity of the structure itself. I think we should take into consideration the
You can
complexity
take
of
it
the
in,
structure
but I don't think we can.
Okay,
It's,
fair
to me,
enough.
it's a building
that I built myself
that
with
you
my
built
own, with my own 2
without
hands.
permit.
Correct, but still with my own 2 hands, no contractors, no nothing. 2 years of my life.
Well,
Outside of my children, this is my crowning achievement.
There's no question it's beautiful,
Well, you didn't even see the inside.
but it violates.
It does.
Your point is well taken with me that if
Had I
this was
asked
just an
prior.
application on a piece of paper, it would be difficult to find a hardship at that point.
Right.
So why is
I
there a
mean,
hardship now?
there's already 3 parts of this house that are confirmed to be 10 feet off the property line, or thereabouts. Maybe it's 12. The other 3 wings, so
Okay.
to speak.
Right.
So I just don't understand why this one all of a sudden got 7 feet farther.
I'm talking a little bit out loud for ideas.
Well, I can answer that question. There would have been no reason to put the time and the effort of 2 years of my life into it for 7 feet. Right? I mean, had I not gone back, and obviously I didn't know about the setbacks or anything, so I wasn't trying to push to the setback and go past the setback. But had I built something that did not violate the setback, take 7 feet off that extension, right? It's a 20-foot extension, now I'm at a 13-foot extension. The time and effort I put into that building would not be worth 13 feet. I needed to have enough space to have a feasible, workable office in there, plus get another car in, or at the very least, all the equipment storage that is now in those 2 red doors. So I mean, that's my thinking of when I constructed it and when I got the person to come out and say, you know, how to do this and how to build it. So, you know, to answer your question about the rest of the house being very close to the setback, I didn't build the rest of the house, but to come in and build a building, it wouldn't make sense to build it unless it was big enough to be functional. So,
Ken?
I'm just talking a little bit out loud to try and find a solution and get through this meeting. My thought, talking to the board a little bit, is we somehow table this request and ask the applicant to investigate at least 2 ideas. One would be to talk to the neighbor and see if you could purchase the 10 feet. You know, you don't have to go 10 feet all along the property line, I don't think, do you? I mean, you could just get a little bump out, in a
Right.
sense.
right, 25 by 10.
And I don't know, you know, how willing he would be to do that, but try and simplify it, that it's a bump out, and that he does not have to stand, and is this true, he does not have to stand in front of this committee to get an exception on his property? All the paperwork could be through.
It's likely that he would be a co-applicant in the process. If Mr. Borzo wants
Be
to,
the representative.
yeah, he can do
So,
that.
so you could try and, sell him the idea that, there's not much skin off his back, or he could show up electronically to the meeting and just listen, and then, if he thinks something's going wrong, then he could put a stop to it. So, to me, you should go back and investigate. The other thing is, we're not supposed to take money into account. In a sense, we don't care that it's $10 or $100, okay? But I wouldn't mind seeing the construction of this to understand, if we ask you, I know you want a bigger office, but what would it take to cut 7 feet off your building?
It's not possible. I'm just being very frank with you. It's got a glass window in the corner. It's not possible.
What's the
whole
flooring
thing's
and
coming
roofing
down.
system?
What's that?
What's the flooring and roofing system? TJI, floor truss,
Yeah. It's
wood?
Okay, but I don't want to, I don't know if I want to get into that. I just want to say, you need to go back. We want to table we're not going to vote no, we're not going to vote yes. We're going to table it. You go back and work on 2 ideas for us. One is buying property from your neighbor, and 2, show us why you can't cut it off, or tell us why exactly you can't cut it off. And then we have another meeting.
It's a good idea. Brian?
Well, yeah, I guess if wood can be cut, yes, it's
that. I mean,
not your
let's
dream build at
let's
that
step
point.
out of the board mentality for a moment and be just some guys talking. Seriously?
I love it.
I
It's
mean,
beautiful.
It took me 2 years to
I
do
had,
it.
I had to cut a
can't-
foundation out that was 2 feet over the line. Me personally, I've lived in this township for 35 years.
Well,
I had to do it,
Then-
and I did it. I got denied.
it's going to take me 2 years to do
I
it.
understand,
I mean, you know.
it. But I've been on the board for 1.5 years, and we've never approved such a application.
I stood where
Never.
you're standing on behalf of another client whose family has lived in this township for 100 years. They're the most well-known family in this township for an accessory structure. He got denied. It's not about that.
Fair
It's if we let this happen, everybody can do it. We lose in court then.
Fair enough.
That's what it's about.
Alan?
Listen to all the discussion. I would be for denying this request totally and have the applicant come back. I would not postpone it. All structures can be reduced. We've had basements reduced. We've had steel barns that couldn't be reduced. We've had barns put on the property line that are gonna get moved. It's not impossible. To end discussion, I'm not for it. I'd make a motion to deny if
To
it was
deny it,
up right now.
as is.
Go
Let-
ahead.
Let's open it up to the public. Is there anybody in the audience who'd like to speak on this application? Seeing none in the audience, doesn't look like anybody else is online. I look at it from a point of view of, let's assume this isn't I don't know how big it is, 5-acre lot. Let's assume it was in just a neighborhood like it is immediately adjacent to you to the north there, or to that neighborhood just north. On smaller lots, homes that are closer, it'd almost be difficult to believe that one of these homeowners would say, boy, I bet I can just build 2 feet from my property line, because if the other neighbor built 2 foot from his property line, we've got homes that are 4 foot apart, almost touching, at that point, something would trigger and say, boy, I wonder if I'm allowed to do that if I'm, if I need to get a permit or talk to an architect or come to the building department. So I think the fact that it's on a bigger piece of property, if I buy into the fact that, boy, I just didn't think about it, or even maybe, better argument might be, I didn't know where my property line was. I've always mowed 20 more feet, and I just assumed that 20 feet was my land. But anyway, there's so many ways that this could have been validated is, should I do this? Can I do this? I mean, I think most of our township knows if we put up a fence, I gotta get a fence permit. If I put up a sign, I've gotta get a sign permit. It's not an egregious thing to expect from a municipality to issue permits, and it's really about safety and about property rights and about everything else. I think that there are solutions. I think one solution is cutting it down, and, I'm sure that would be traumatic, and there's probably other solutions, buying property, doing different things. But for me personally, it's very hard. And I think, Jim, you make really the point that hit home with me is, would we approve this if you're coming to us before, hey, I've got a good idea, this is what I want to do?
Right.
We probably would say, boy, it's a beautiful house, we'd love you to put an addition on it. Could you go west? You've got a lot of property to the west. And so the fact that you went north without permits, without checking with the township, when there were other solutions that would have completely avoided any type of variance request, I think there were other ways to do it, had it been done in proper order.
Okay. Fair.
With that, gentlemen, if there is a motion,
I'll make a motion in case number 23-013 to deny the request. This is a self-imposed hardship. The structure was built without site plan approval, building permits, and all the discussion that the board has had related to this case.
we have a motion, do we have support?
Support.
Brian, can we have, or let's vote on it, and then I've got a question as it relates to enforcement, but if we get a roll call, please?
Mr. Galley,
Yes.
Mr. Sharl,
Yes.
Mr. Zurich,
Yes.
Mr. Auger,
Yes.
Mr. Epping.
Yes. Brian, if I can follow up, and I think at least out of curiosity, so what happens next? What are the options for a township for enforcement? What are the options for the applicant to seek other remedies, or how do we?
Yeah, so the applicant has the ability to appeal to circuit court within 30 days, I believe, of the minutes being approved, so that'll be next month. There will be a meeting next month. What we would do as an enforcement agency to enforce it is we would wait for the minutes to be approved for this meeting and then send Mr. Borso a letter stating he has 30 days to apply for a permit, to reduce the structure, come into compliance, and or work out a plan with our building official on the actions to bring it into conformity. with the
Subsequent to that, he could come in for another application if he was to acquire additional property to do a
Yeah, he,
combination and split
Yeah.
and work together and potentially fill out another variance request for.
yeah, he's already has a survey, so it's easy to go back to the surveyor and have that redrawn and to gather, you know, the 10 by 30 feet or whatever he needs.
He'd have to have a 50-foot rear yard setback from that 10-foot also, wouldn't he?
No, the 50 would be the west property line.
Yeah, the west property line.
This is a side
Right,
yard.
but once, if, hypothetically, if he was to gain enough footage to get to 10 feet, he would have to also have 50 feet in back of that 10 feet, correct?
Going west.
Well, he's 173 feet from the west property line.
Yeah, he's got
trying to
plenty
make
of
He's
distance.
trying to make a fine point here.
No, but he couldn't just go
The
out the
bump out.
width of the building. The bump out would have to extend 50 foot west to give up that west
Correct.
rear
Rear yard
setback. It could go all the way to the western boundary.
Yeah.
Yeah, the way the ordinance reads is the rear property line or the rear setback is the opposite of the front. All other sides are considered sides.
Right.
All other lines. So no matter which way he does it, if he does a bump out, all of those dimensions are side dimensions.
Interesting, okay.
So-
So it'd be 10
So
foot.
you could do a small bump out.
Yeah, really, really small. You go to the assessing department with the new, you know, the new drawing showing that, and, you know, we'll review it as a lot split committee, and we'll deny it, based on 1 to 4, and then you go to you apply for the zoning board of appeals.
For the 1
You
to
mean
4
because the
ratio.
split is 1 to 4?
The split would violate the 1 to 4 ratio.
Yeah, but it's being combined with this, so it's not a variance. It's not a,
Well, you're not
not
increasing
a-
the nonconformity of either parcel.
the split in and itself is non-conforming because of the 4 to 1 width to depth ratio.
Yeah. But
Since it's going to be added to this piece of property, it's not an issue.
it is because new parcel numbers will be created, so that creates a new parcel.
The existing parcels are non-compliant. They predate the ordinance
It's a,
when they
it's a
become.
paperwork issue.
It is.
Okay.
It is, because when you're theoretically, by assigning it a new parcel ID, which they will, likely, then that creates a new parcel, so that now that has to be brought into conformity.
Yeah, but
Even
When
on a
you
boundary,
join it.
even on a boundary adjustment. You know, that's a question for the assessor, but we can cross that bridge when we get there.
we've done this many times, where you have the existing property, the split, and then the combined parcels. There's no new parcel. It's part of,
Yeah.
I can't remember. We can work that out, but
that
within
can
the-
be done.
Within the last 3 months, someone came in here for a specific variance, and then there was a ratio variance tacked to the end of it, and it was just simply because it was here. and
Bookkeeping.
Yeah, it is, it's keep
So-
parcel whole.
We appreciate your time.
So I have a question stemming from that then. Because this is not gonna be an easy conversation with the neighbor. If I get the neighbor to agree to sell me the property, am I guaranteed that this problem goes away? Because I cannot go to him and have these hard conversations and talk money with him if there is a chance that I'm gonna come back here and get denied.
No, as long as you have 10 foot outside the wall of that,
You
Then
won't,
it's
you
all,
won't be,
it's
Then
all
it's
irrelevant,
done.
right? 'Cause
the
there is no
building
violation
side
at
of
that
it,
point,
you
right?
won't be back.
What's that?
If, on the building itself, if you get that amount of property, you will not be back.
Okay. Because there will be
The
no.
split committee will determine what needs to be done, whether it needs to come back here or
Okay.
it can be approved
Understood.
administratively.
Essentially, you have non-conforming lots of record as it relates to the current ordinance of.
Right.
This board has brought other lots simply from a paperwork point of view, provided that variance for these essentially non-conforming lots of record.
Got it.
It's, in my opinion, different than, a setback issue that's self-created. This is really bringing them into compliance with the ordinance.
Okay, understood.
Is that fair to say?
I'm personally sorry for the aggravation, and I really hope your neighbor will work with you a little bit.
He's already said he wouldn't. So, just so you know.
he said he
I-
wouldn't.
I have to go back.
A little tongue-in-cheek, I'm not sorry for the aggravation, because I do think this was self-created, and I think you should become a poster child for explaining to people why permits are important. And quite frankly, I think there's many steps along the road where the township probably worked very closely and very compliantly with you in terms of,
Oh, absolutely.
I've put up a deck in other communities, didn't know I needed a permit, and I had to pull all the posts out and prove that I dug down 42 inches. So frankly, you know, just as another homeowner, I think you got darn lucky that you didn't have to tear it down and start over in terms of electric inspections and everything else like that. So,
Fair enough.
you know, for those people on TV, I mean, it's not because the township wants the extra $100 permit fee or whatever it is. It's truly for the safety of the buildings, and it's for property rights, because you really have encumbered your neighbor. Quite frankly, when they now have a piece of concrete on their property, they can't put up a fence. If they want to sell the property, they'd have to explain that. So it's not a light issue whatsoever.
Understood. Fair enough.
By the way, I wanted to look at it today, but you were paving your driveway.
Yes.
It was
I got to
inaccessible.
the culvert and quit.
All right. Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. With that, we will call case number 23-014, Brian Davis petitioner requesting 2 total variances. The first, a 5.9-foot front yard setback variance, and the second, a 39.1 foot rear yard setback variance, both from section 4.06D, table 4.06, in order to construct an addition to the home at 4682 Sashabaw Road, which is also in the R1A single-family residential portion of the neighborhood. Good evening.
Good evening.
Thanks for sitting through our meeting.
It's interesting, actually.
Aren't you glad you're here now?
I'm glad I didn't start working on it.
So tell us your names and your address, and then explain what we're doing here.
Yeah, Brian Davis,
Thank you.
4682 Sashabaw.
Great.
I'm Allison Davis.
Nice to
Same
meet you
address.
both. So you're on Sashabaw, down closer to Lake Oakland?
We're on Lake Oakland.
On Lake Oakland, right at the bridge there.
Mhm.
Your property faces, your address is on Sashabaw, and it's kind of the length of the property, just because of the adjacency to the water and so forth. So you've got an existing home, and you want to obtain a few variances to put on an addition?
Well, the house as it sits is actually non-conforming. The garage that I'd like to build on top of received a variance, I think like in 72, from what I was told. This property was actually owned by my neighbors that still live behind us. They split that property and built another home back behind us. So as the house sits, it's like, I don't know, less than 10 feet from what is considered the rear setback. So what I'm asking to do is just to build on top of what is already there, that garage. I have a deck there. I want to take the deck off, not expanding the footprint from where it is right now. It's a small house. We sold our soul to get on the lake, and bought a small house with the intention we can make it bigger at some point. And we just want to put on a great room, because we have a very small living room. It's the other, I guess the other thing is that I guess over the years, since my neighbor owned it, a couple other people have owned it, and it's just a hodgepodge of roof lines, and aesthetically, not the most appealing in my opinion. So I'd like the opportunity to put on this addition, tie all the roof lines together. I did bring a model for you guys to
Oh,
look
cool.
at. So right now, this is the,
You're on Sashabaw.
yeah,
Yes.
Sashabaw is right here.
Yep.
So there's a garage, we have a deck on there, like that. You can see that, I think, at one point, this was an addition, this was an addition, and I think that was approved as a variance, back at, like I said, 72. And really, we just want to put this right on top of the existing garage, and put a 12-foot deck coming off towards the water. And I don't think we're infringing. I think we have plenty of room towards the water. But this setback from here to the side, or I guess backyard, kind of seems like my side yard, is what the concern us with. I don't know if you guys wanna see it or not, but.
Oh, I can see
No,
it.
it's very cool,
Yeah, thank
very
you.
cool.
And it's on TV being broadcast.
Did you build that?
No, my architect did.
Really?
Did he-
Put a little man inside of it so
I
you can
saw
see the
the
scale.
So, so your front is on Sashaba, therefore your rear is parallel with Sashaba behind your house. Currently, right now, you point out that the home is non-conforming as it relates to the rear setback. Right now, the existing house looks like it's about 13.4 feet. You should have a 50-foot setback on the rear, so that was already a granted, or at least a non-conforming lot, probably a variance or maybe before. You're actually gonna push that wall. My understanding that the foundation's gonna stay, but the new addition's gonna cantilever out and go closer, further east. So instead of 13.4, you're gonna be about 10.9 feet off the property line.
Well, there's a
It's to the north.
chimney chase that comes out already on that side, and it would be at the same distance as that.
Okay, is that the
Right.
north alley?
Right there is
Yeah.
chimney.
Masonry chimney.
Yeah.
It says cantilever.
But that's north or?
That's north.
Okay, I live on Sashaba, where I live goes north-south, but here it goes east-west.
It's going east-west,
It
yeah.
goes a lot of different directions
Yeah.
as you go down it.
So,
Make it look nicer.
so in other words, the foundation isn't gonna be going closer to your rear property line, just that the house or the chimney's gonna, still be there.
Well,
Just-
the chimney right here is already existing.
Yep.
What I wanted to do, just to maximize the
Room.
space, was to cantilever 2 feet, which would then still be at the same plane
At the
as.
same plane, okay. Got it. And then the second setback is the 5.9 feet in the front. Typically, a front setback in the R1A would be 40 foot. You're, I'm gonna go back to your drawing here just so I can get this straight into the record.
34-1.
34.1 on that angle.
Is that a bay sticking out towards Sashaba? That
bay.
he's measuring the 34?
Bay window, you mean?
It's a box coming
Up
out.
to the garage.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
More
just
depth.
something for aesthetics that the,
It's a cantilevered bay, it looks
Okay.
like.
Which comes out just a few feet further than the existing structure does.
well, the existing structure towards the road is actually
Yeah,
up
no.
here. This is the front, like the front door.
Right.
So it's still not going past where existing houses from the road.
Yeah, the existing house is closer, right? What's that?
31.5.
I can't read it on the computer what that dimension is.
31.5.
So, Brian, what are we getting the variance on the existing structure?
No, the new structure.
And I was told if there's a variance on that to build on it, then you need another variance.
Does the existing structure already have a variance?
I didn't see anything in our records, but it's very possible.
So I'm just wondering if it's, in terms of accuracy, I understand that it's a variance for the new addition, but that new addition is still a greater distance than the existing structure, and does the existing structure, should our variance request be more off of the existing structure?
The closest point, you would think.
The closest point, the
Yeah.
greatest deviation from the expectation.
Yeah, Brian, I believe you
Which
sent-
would be a book.
But
you
at
sent.
that
copy
point,
of the
right.
variance
But
to
at
my
that point, it
architect
had to be re-advertised.
a while ago, so.
True.
31.5 feet.
And it's
Yeah, I may have found
a
it.
essentially a
So-
validation. You really wouldn't need a
In
variance.
the
for
past,
this.
you've cleaned these things up by going to the one that needs the greatest variance.
I have, yeah, but I think Mr. Davis is correct. I believe I found, through our document management system, I found the file.
record.
Oh,
A
so
record
that
of-
the 31.5 has already been approved.
Yeah,
So it's just for this new addition. So it's essentially on the north side and the south side.
yeah.
Will the garage remain as is, garage?
Yeah.
Is that a 1.5 car basically, or?
I think technically it's 20 by 30. But I don't know how you could get 2 cars in there. But,
We can't even get one in there.
yeah, it's a poured wall, all 4 sides, and it's had the deck up there for a lot of years, and yeah, we just really need the space.
Your home is obviously in an area of non-conforming lots, that whole area. Since I've been on the ZBA for 10 years, we've probably approved 10 or 15 rebuilds in that area, and my view has always been, if it makes sense, it's not really increasing the non-conformity, and it's improving the neighborhood for everybody, which in my opinion it is. It's improving the value of your life and the value of everybody's property around you. To me, it's all a positive.
Clinton Street, the other side of Sashabaw is way worse than
Yeah.
And we've had a
north
lot of
side.
cases
Yeah.
over the last several
North side
years.
is more reasonable.
Okay, so we're gonna try and help them out here and prove this somehow?
On the cantilever deck, that 12 feet, he's not encroaching on the canal or anything as far as the townships.
No, he's not.
I mean,
He's-
because there's no footings it doesn't show, but in case he does have to put footings, is that an encroachment?
You're allowed a 10-foot, yeah, I mean, he's more than the 50-foot requirement to the lake.
Okay,
I mean,
all right.
the platted water's edge, he's not, but we go by where the actual water's edge is,
Okay.
which is clearly, significantly further away.
Just a question. Thanks.
That whole canal's pretty much seawalled too, isn't it? Around
We have a
that
seawall.
area? Yeah.
Any other questions, comments, thoughts, or motions? But before we do that, I will open it up to the public. We see no one in the public. Is there anybody online?
No.
See no public comment? Any additional questions, guys?
Well, I'll shoot. I'll make a motion in case number 23-014 to approve the two variances as published, stating that the existing home is more non-compliant than what the addition is just going to be over basically the same footprint of the existing garage and house. With the architectural model presented and the details, I make a motion, as I say, to approve it.
We have a motion. Do we have support? Support. Get a roll call, please, Brian.
Mr. Sharrow?
Yes.
Mr. Zurich?
Yes.
Mr. Auger?
Yes.
Mr. Epping?
Yes.
Mr. Galley?
Yes.
Looks like a fun project. Congratulations. Look forward to seeing it. Please continue to work with the building department and get everything you guys need,
Thanks for the,
including permits.
Yep, thank you for all the
Thanks
detailed
for the-
information.
thanks for the survey and the site plan.
I didn't want to come in here without that, so gotta know the details, right?
I did find it.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Was it, I think it was 72? or-
Yeah, it's way in our index cards.
Thanks very much. Good luck.
Thank you.
guys.
Thanks.
I'll make a motion to approve the regular meeting minutes of July 19th, 2023 as submitted.
Second.
Approval, support, all in favor?
Aye.
Approved minutes from July 19th, 2023. Last thing is, with the meeting still being open, we have opportunity for discussion. I would like to start the discussion by saying that our zoning board has been in the paper a lot, been discussion of a number of things. I would like to just, for the record, say how proud I am to work with each and every one of you on the board. I'll tell you, I think everybody here just looks at projects objectively, really considers the ordinance, defends the township, and I'm glad that we're all here. We'll continue to support you.
Thanks,
Has there
Jim.
been any movement on the barn on 15?
That's, in here,
Oh.
so, yeah, he's got 30 days.
Okay, from
As
this.
of tomorrow.
Okay.
Yep.
Any other discussion, guys?
I'll make a motion to adjourn at 7:34.
Support, all in favor?
Aye.
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 We are adjourned. Thank you.